to hashtag 52 Needs, and this week we are talking about effectiveness. And I am so delighted to have with me Phil Abernathy, who's a global leader helping organization. Oh God, let me start again.
Yeah, start again.
Not a leader, you're a leader.
I'm going to write that one down as well. Okay.
Oh,
I love that. That came out beautiful, by the way. Yeah.
Never mind. It's been a long week. I ran my first face-to-face workshop in a year and a half yesterday.
First face-to-face workshop. Wow.
In a year and a half.
In Brisbane.
Yeah. It's only been online for the last year and a half. Oh. So it was wonderful, but it was hard work because it also meant driving to the Gold Coast, coming back, and yeah. Anyway, enough about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Going. Okay. Welcome to hashtag 52 Needs, and this week we are exploring effectiveness. And I'm delighted to have with me Phil Abernathy, who is a global leader helping organizations transform to a new Agile, the capital A way of working that helps them get more productive and their people more engaged. Phil has over 38 years of business and leadership experience and is a world-renowned trainer, coach, and consultant who has helped train and transform global companies like IBM, Honeywell, and Shell. Phil is the founder and director of Purple Candor, a boutique leadership and management consulting company. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you very much, Angela. I'm really happy to be here.
Yes, so am I. Okay, so we're talking about effectiveness at work. Okay, so there are two ways in which you can, where there are two things that people often get confused. There's effectiveness and there's efficiency.
Yep. I'm going to talk about effectiveness.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's get out of the way what it is not, so we can really focus on that specifically with regards to leadership, because I think there's this misconception that a lot of people think that when they're really efficient in managing, they're effectively leading. No.
Yeah, they're not. It's very different, very different. So I like to use, and I have used, a very simple model for this. I break it into two parts. You've got doing the right work and doing the work right.
Yeah.
So doing the right work is the top part of our funnel, which decides what are we working on. And it starts right at the top with the why. Why are we even in this department, in this company, this team? What is the purpose of this team?
Yeah.
What is the mission of this team? And understanding that collaboratively as a team, because in the workspace today, we're all in teams. I think there is almost no individual. You may think, oh, these nerds work alone. IT is a people business. It's not a technology business. So we work in teams. So the collaborative shared understanding of the purpose, the why, is the most important thing. In many of the companies that I go into, I get the complaint that we're all very busy and we're working very hard, but we just feel we're drowning and we're not effective.
Yeah.
Not efficient, we're not effective. So how can you help? And the first thing they come back to me with is, can we have a practice to improve prioritization? So we want to prioritize better in the doing the right work. And therein lies the problem, that this department and that department. And what they don't, when I ask them, why don't you prioritize better now? So I just use the 5 whys technique. Yeah, because there's a lot to do. Well, why don't you prioritize? Why don't you put them in a lot? Well, because each one has differing needs and different goals. Why does each one have different goals? Well, yeah, because, the strategies are, well, why are the strategies different? You're in one company. Everybody comes together at the top somewhere, so the strategy needs to be cascaded. And at the heart of effectiveness sits effective strategy. And strategy means not just how you do it, but it includes vision, mission, purpose, goals. You could use things like OKRs, or objectives and key results. It doesn't matter what technique you use. Yeah. But that you have shared understanding as a team of that top part. If you get that wrong, then, or there's different versions of the truth or the goal or where we go. It's like having a carriage with 4 very powerful horses and all of them going in a different direction. Your carriage is not going very far.
Yeah.
It's not effective. It's not reaching the destination.
Mm-hmm.
That's the top part. And the other bit there is, I worked at a company that had a British general from the army, or he was a major, something like this, but a military person who had the analogy of taking the hill. So he came in and he said, this is the hill we're going to take. And while, you could say the metaphor is a bit strong and it's a bit aggressive, but it absolutely focused the entire company. That is the one hill. We're not going to that hill. We're not going to that hill. We are only going to this hill.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sense of purpose, he didn't tell you how to get to the hill. By the way, that was what was very powerful. He allowed the levels below and empowered them to figure out how to get to that hill, which is exactly how the special service forces operate in the armies and the militaries around the world today.
Yes.
That's how Genghis Khan operated at that time.
Yeah.
He led his tribe of 100,000 people, where they had something like 17 different dialect languages. He could not read, he could not write. And he was one of the, in a bad way, maybe, looking back now, you can say he was a tyrant and he did X, Y, Z. But he led his people to their purpose. You can challenge the purpose, but they were effective. They were very effective.
Yes.
So getting that right is at the heart of success at work.
Mm-hmm.
Once you understand that, then comes the bottom part, which is doing the work right. So the top part is doing the right work through the funnel, which are the balls, because there's always too much of work. Mm-hmm. There's always stuff. Demand is always more than supply. That is, you always have constraints.
Yeah.
And there is a saying that if there is no constraint, you won't need organizations. So constraint is what we will always operate under. So you need to funnel it, and you need to decide, what do you work on next? Mm-hmm. Once you have that, then comes the effectiveness of execution. Mm-hmm. And I like to say that as in the micro, so in the macro. So that means in the execution of work, you also need to know what is effective. So I have a lot of people, so for example, who do extensive design upfront for a project they have, before even knowing whether the project's going ahead. Yeah. They've spent 3 months designing the UI and the UX. You don't need that. You do it on a sketch of paper with 2 days and 3 days. That's enough. So the just enough concept is one of the most effective ways, techniques to be effective in doing the work right. Now, if you look at artists and you look at Michelangelo and whoever, even Monet, they did not paint with a goal in mind. They painted, then they painted over.
Well, isn't that the big statement that Michelangelo said? He said he didn't carve David. He released him from the stone.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
No.
And it's not something you have to get right up front. And maybe it's due to the pressures, or actually, if you look at our way of working has come down from Henry Ford's time. I mean, we haven't changed much in the approach. So we still think big picture, design the car, specify everything. And although you may say Henry Ford was the father of, this structured working process, etc., he said to people, I don't want you to bring your brains to work. You just bring your hands, and I will bring the work to you. So the cars were rotated through you, you tighten the nut, car goes. And many people today are being made to work like this in a knowledge industry, which it doesn't apply to, because every single car that comes across is different. Every problem you face in the knowledge industry is different. So we're using archaic ways to be effective,
Yeah.
And that's where the agility concepts of just-in-time, prototyping, fast thinking, small iterations is so vital. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
And
if you don't mind, I'm gonna interject here, and I'm gonna offer my part, because
please do.
my work is the other part, I think, of efficiency that dovetails with what you're doing, which is all about communication and listening. Because if there's no communication and there's no listening, effectiveness can be quite undermined. You know, you might get things done, but how you're going to get them done is a totally different thing. So it's the ability to actually communicate. It's to lead by example, to say, you know, this is what I'm doing, and demonstrating, like we've talked about before, you know, these are the big rocks, you know, the sand around it, that's not really what matters. Let's focus on the big rock. So then you can have the efficiency in getting streamlined and focused, and, you know, all of those things that you've just talked about. But people often
the effectiveness, as you were saying, Angela, if you look at the without collaboration in today's world, and I'd like to take it, it's a little bigger than just communication, you know, because I like the way you brought in the word listening.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you communicate, I communicate, but I listen as well, and I collaborate. And if you put that together, without that, you cannot be effective.
No. And it's the ability which we need more and more. It's to embrace change, right?
Yes.
Because if we still do things like Henry Ford, you know, in a world that is changing in such a rapid way that we can barely keep up with it, then effectiveness is mode.
Yeah. And you know, finding the balance in today's, you know, you can say it's Gen Z or whatever it is, but I think people are beginning to realize that you need that balance. You can't just go and be treated like a, you know, a factory person from 100 years ago.
No.
You can't, because that's not how the world is. So lots of I think learnings there on both sides for many companies. And today I'd just like to add one more thing to effectiveness, that you've got the soft side, what we call soft, but is actually crucial. I like to call it crucial skills rather than soft skills, because they're not soft skills. They're very hard skills, difficult. You've got that side for effectiveness. Then you've got the purpose side, which is what am I working on, and, you know, let's collaborate to get this done. And then you've got the aspect of actually using your core mastery, developing that to become better, satisfying the need to learn and grow, getting feedback, improving, getting feedback, improving.
I so agree with you. Yes.
Oh, just so important to be effective, because
absolutely. Yeah. And
we have to get it right up front.
Yeah. And it's the ability to make mistakes, self-correct. It's the ability to be responsible instead of blame, you know, and there's this go, okay, I'm going to correct this. I'm going to admit that I've made a mistake. I'm going to self-correct, and I'm going to move on. That is effectiveness for me as well.
And having the vulnerability that is linked to admitting the mistake. And in one word, you know, the growth mindset, if you want to encapsulate it, is vital to being effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
And otherwise you struggle through the whole lot.
And I think in today's world, and you mentioned Gen Z, and, you know, it doesn't matter really, but in a world that, even though we can't travel at the moment, but we are still we're hyper connected. And that's what I love about it. I mean, look at us. I mean, you're in Bratislava, I'm in Brisbane, right? Starts with a B, but is on different.
That's true. That's the only connection.
So we have an ability to talk about things, and so what I think what we've come to is the ability to actually embrace diversity, which in my mind is really important for effectiveness as well. Because if you just have one way of looking at the world, that may work for a little while, but again, in a rapidly transforming world that keeps changing all the time, I think to have as many viewpoints as possible really supports effectiveness. And again, we've talked about this before, happiness, fulfillment, all of those things that are just as important, if not more, that underpin effectiveness.
Absolutely. And if you're not going to be happy at the end of the day, even at work, because half our waking lives, we're working. Half. 1/3 we're sleeping, the other 2/3, half of it, we're working. Yeah. So if you can't be happy, what a pity.
Exactly.
So the effectiveness part also applies to happiness. And I like Richard Branson's saying, a lot of people believe that there's a big move in the industry in the last 2 or 3 years about customer first. I walk into organizations and they say customer first. And Richard Branson has always said, it's your employees first, because it's your employees that touch the customers.
Exactly.
And their happiness is what makes a successful company. And a lot of companies miss that. They treat their employees, not the best, and it affects the effectiveness.
I mean, we all know about emotional contagion these days. When you've got somebody who walks around in a fog all the time and spreads misery, it's, it is contagious in a negative way. But when they go around, because that's my paradigm, you can either spread fog or you can spread sunshine. And
I like that. Yeah.
So, you've got a choice to make. And again, you can be effective and efficient, probably more efficient than effective when you're spreading fog, because you can do that by, really getting people into, task focus. But effective is also taking the whole person into consideration.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
thank you very much, Angela, for the chat. I think it was a good time. And I like the one about spreading sunshine rather than fog. And my background maybe was chosen appropriately.
It was definitely. Thank you so much, Phil. It was a delight to talk to you. And
my pleasure.
everybody for watching, and I'll see you next week.